Choose your position, the giant bride said. What he felt beneath the blanket changed his life. The stage was 3 hours late, and Arthur Pemberton had checked his pocket watch 17 times. He stood outside Salvation Creek's general store, his thin frame trembling despite the afternoon heat. Sweat dampened his collar, though whether from the sun or sheer terror he couldn't say. Around him, townspeople gathered with undisguised curiosity. Mail-order brides were common enough in these parts, but Arthur Pemberton getting one? That was entertainment. Bet she takes one look at him and gets right back on that stage, someone muttered loud enough to carry. Arthur's fingers twisted the brim of his hat. He was 32 years old, stood barely 5'7" in his boots, and possessed the build of a man who'd never won a physical contest in his life. His homestead, inherited from an uncle who died childless, was modest at best. He had 40 acres, a cabin that leaked when it rained, and a barn that sagged precariously to one side. He'd placed the advertisement in desperation, certain no woman would respond. When the letter arrived from someone calling herself Duchess, he'd nearly wept with relief. The stage finally appeared through the dust, its wheels grinding to a halt. The driver climbed down, opened the door, and stepped back quickly. The crowd leaned forward. What emerged defied every expectation Arthur had constructed during 3 sleepless nights. First came a hand, easily twice the size of his own, gripping the doorframe. Then a boot, massive and worn, planted itself in the dirt. Finally, the woman herself unfolded from the coach's interior, rising and rising until she stood at her full height. Arthur's head barely reached her chest. She was built like the mountains that ringed the valley, broad, solid, and utterly immovable. Her shoulders stretched the seams of her dress. Her arms showed muscle definition visible even through fabric, and her hands looked capable of snapping fence posts. But it was her clothing that drew gasps from the gathered crowd. She wore a wedding dress, or what had once been one. The white fabric had yellowed to cream, the lace hung in tatters, and patches covered tears in a dozen places. The hem, shortened to accommodate her height, revealed those enormous boots. The bodice, strained across her powerful frame, held together by careful mending that spoke to years of necessary repairs. Her face, weathered and angular, swept across the crowd with an expression Arthur recognized instantly. Defensive expectation of rejection. She'd done this before, he realized. Arrived in towns to shock silence and barely concealed disgust. Her eyes found Arthur, the only man standing alone with obvious purpose, and something flickered across her features. Disappointment? Resignation? She retrieved a single battered trunk from the stage and set it down with ease, though it would have required 2 men to lift. "You're Arthur Pemberton." Her voice carried the roughness of gravel and disuse. "Yes, ma'am, and you must be—" He fumbled with his hat. "Duchess? That's what I go by." She looked him up and down, her assessment swift and brutal. "You're smaller than I expected." "I'm sorry." "Don't apologize. I'm larger than anyone expects. Story of my life." She glanced at the staring crowd. "We should go. I'm used to gawkers, but it doesn't mean I enjoy them." Arthur helped load her trunk into his wagon, though helped was generous. He grabbed one end and immediately regretted it. As the weight nearly pulled him over, Duchess took it from him without comment and lifted it into the wagon bed as if it weighed nothing. The crowd's whispers intensified as Arthur climbed onto the wagon seat, Mayor Pritchard's wife, Constance, stepped forward. Her expression carried the particular cruelty of women who'd never known hardship. "Mr. Pemberton, surely you can't be serious about this arrangement. That creature is hardly suitable for decent society." Duchess's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Arthur felt something stir in his chest, unfamiliar and sharp. "She's my intended bride, Mrs. Pritchard, and I'd thank you to speak respectfully." His voice shook, but the words came out. Constance's eyebrows rose. "Well, I suppose desperation makes strange bedfellows. Don't expect acceptance in this town." Arthur snapped the reins before he could formulate a response, and the wagon lurched forward. Duchess sat beside him, her bulk taking up most of the bench. They rode in silence for the first mile, the town disappearing behind them into gathering dusk. "You didn't have to defend me," Duchess finally said. "I'm used to it." "That doesn't make it right." "Maybe not, but it's reality." She studied the landscape passing by. "Your letter said you had a homestead. How much land?" 40 acres, small operation. I've got chickens, a milk cow, vegetable garden, nothing impressive." 40 acres is plenty for 2 people willing to work it." She paused. "Your letter was honest. Said you were looking for partnership, not beauty. Said you needed help running the place. That true, or were you just being kind?" Arthur considered lying, protecting his pride. But what was the point? "It's true. I'm not built for heavy labor, never have been. I manage, but it's a struggle. I thought—" He trailed off, embarrassed. "You thought you'd get a sturdy farm wife, someone who could pull her weight." Duchess's tone held no judgment. "Instead, you got a freak in a wedding dress." "I don't think you're a freak." "You don't know me yet." They reached the homestead as darkness fell. Arthur lit a lantern, illuminating the cabin's single room. It was clean, but sparse. A bed in one corner, a table with 2 chairs, a pot-belly stove, and a few shelves holding supplies. Duchess had to duck to enter, and even then the ceiling seemed to press down on her. She surveyed the space, her expression unreadable. "Where do you want me to sleep?" "The bed. It's not much, but it's comfortable enough." "And you?" "I'll take the barn. There's hay up in the loft. I'll be fine." Duchess turned to face him fully. "Mr. Pemberton, Arthur, let's be clear about something. I'm not here to take your bed while you sleep in a barn. That's not partnership. That's charity. And I won't accept that. I wasn't trying to—" "I know what you're trying to do. Be gentlemanly, but look at me." She gestured at herself. "I'm not the kind of woman men are gentlemanly toward. I'm the kind men point at and laugh. The kind children run from. If this arrangement is going to work, we need honesty. So I'll sleep in the barn. You keep your bed." "No." Arthur surprised himself with the firmness in his voice. "This is your home now. Not just a place you're tolerating until something better comes along. Your home. And in your home, you don't sleep in the barn." They stared at each other, locked in a battle of wills neither had expected. Finally, Duchess sighed. "Then we share the cabin. You take the bed. I'll make a pallet by the stove. Final offer." Arthur recognized he wouldn't win this argument. "All right. But tomorrow we figure out something better." Duchess retrieved bedding from her trunk and arranged it near the stove with practiced efficiency. She'd done this before, Arthur realized. Made herself small, made herself unobtrusive, tried to take up less space than her body demanded. It struck him as profoundly sad. He lay in bed, acutely aware of her presence just feet away. The cabin felt smaller with her in it, but not uncomfortably so. Different. Changed. He heard her moving, settling, then silence. Then, barely audible, he heard something that stopped his breath. Crying. Not loud sobbing, but the quiet, desperate tears of someone who'd learned to cry silently so as not to burden others with their pain. Arthur lay frozen, unsure what to do. Every instinct told him to pretend he hadn't heard, to give her privacy. But the sound cut through him, exposing something raw beneath his own carefully maintained composure. This woman, this powerful, intimidating stranger, was breaking apart in his cabin. "Duchess!" His voice came out barely above a whisper. The crying stopped immediately. "I'm fine. Go to sleep." "You're not fine, and that's all right. Neither am I." Silence. Then, "Why did you really send for a mail-order bride, Arthur? A man like you, educated, kind, you could have found someone local eventually." Arthur sat up, though he couldn't see her in the darkness. "Because I'm tired of being alone. Tired of being the man everyone pities, the weak one, the one who can't do a proper day's work. I wanted a partner who needed me as much as I needed them. You wanted someone desperate enough to overlook your faults." "Yes, exactly that. Is that so terrible?" More silence. When Duchess spoke again, her voice carried exhaustion. "I've worn this dress for 8 years. It was my mother's. She died believing I'd find someone who could see past this body to what's underneath. But no one ever has. Men look at me and see either a monster or a workhorse, never a woman." Arthur climbed out of bed. He moved carefully in the darkness until he found her pallet. He sat down at the edge, feeling her massive form beside him. "I see a woman," he said quietly, "a woman brave enough to travel alone to meet a stranger, a woman who survived in a world that judged her for things beyond her control, a woman who cries quietly so as not to disturb others." He reached out tentatively until he found her hand. It engulfed his completely. "I see someone like me, someone who's been told their whole life they're not quite right, not quite enough." Duchess' fingers closed gently around his hand. "You're not what I expected either. Disappointing? Different. You're kind. That's rare." She paused. "Most men would have sent me back on that stage. Most women would have left after seeing my homestead." They sat in the darkness, hands joined, two people who'd spent their lives on society's margins, finding unexpected connection. Eventually, Arthur felt Duchess shift. "Arthur, could you stay here? Just for tonight. I don't want to be alone." His heart hammered. "Stay where?" "Here, on the pallet. Nothing improper. Just nearby. I've slept alone my whole life. Just once I'd like to wake up and know someone chose to be close to me." Arthur had never shared a bed with anyone except during childhood fevers when his mother sat vigil. The thought terrified and thrilled him in equal measure. "All right, but we maintain propriety. You're my intended bride, not my—" "We're not married yet." "I know. I'm not asking for that. Just asking not to be alone tonight." Arthur lay down on the pallet, careful to maintain distance between them. The blanket she'd used was handmade, probably by her own hands, given its size. It smelled of lavender and wood smoke. In the darkness, he felt her shift, settling. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me. Really seeing me. That's more than anyone's given me in years." Arthur didn't respond with words. Instead, he carefully moved his hand until it found hers again beneath the blanket. What he felt in that simple touch changed everything. Not desire, though there was some of that. Not pity, which would have insulted them both, but recognition, the profound relief of finding another person who understood what it meant to be perpetually other, perpetually not quite right for the world you inhabited. Duchess's fingers intertwined with his, and they lay like that until sleep claimed them both. Morning arrived with golden light streaming through the cabin's single window. Arthur woke disoriented, then remembered where he was and who lay beside him. Duchess was already awake, staring at the ceiling, her expression thoughtful. "Good morning," Arthur ventured. "Morning." She turned her head to look at him. "I haven't slept that well in years." "Neither have I, oddly enough. You'd think the floor would be uncomfortable." "It's not the floor that matters, it's the company." She sat up, her height immediately apparent, even seated. "We should talk about the arrangement. Properly talk about it." Arthur sat up as well, suddenly very aware that they'd spent the night in close proximity. "All right, what do you want to know? What you expect? From me? From this marriage? I need to know what I'm agreeing to." Arthur considered carefully. "I expect partnership. I'll handle the finances, the planning, the lighter work. You handle what I can't physically manage. We build this homestead together. As for the marriage itself—" He felt heat rise in his face. "I won't rush you. We barely know each other. When you're ready, if you're ever ready for that aspect of marriage, you tell me. Until then, we're partners who share a home." Duchess studied him for a long moment. "You're serious? You'd marry me and not demand conjugal rights?" "I'd marry you and hope that eventually you'd want what I want. But I won't force it." "What kind of partnership would that be?" Something in her expression softened. "Arthur Pemberton, you might be the strangest man I've ever met. And I've met a lot of men. Is strange good or bad?" "In this case, good. Definitely good." She stood, and Arthur was reminded once again of her sheer size. "Now, let's see what work needs doing around here. From what I saw last night, that barn's about to collapse." Over the following days, they established routines. Duchess attacked the homestead's problems with methodical efficiency. She reinforced the barn structure, repaired fencing Arthur had been meaning to fix for months, and cleared brush that had been encroaching on the vegetable garden. Arthur handled the cooking, tended the chickens, managed their limited finances, and planned the next season's planting. They worked well together, discovering a natural rhythm. Where Arthur's careful planning met Duchess's physical capability, problems that had seemed insurmountable became manageable. The homestead began to transform from barely functional to genuinely productive. Evenings, they'd sit on the porch Arthur had repaired, watching the sun set over the mountains. They talked about everything: childhood's dreams, fears, the small observations that make up daily life. Arthur learned that Duchess had been born to farming parents who'd viewed her size as divine punishment. She'd left home at 15, working any job that valued strength over appearance, loading freight, breaking horses, even briefly as a circus attraction before the shame became unbearable. "That's where I got the dress," she explained one evening. "The circus owner thought it would be funny. The giant bride, he called me, charged people a nickel to see the woman no man would marry. After 2 years of that, I kept the dress out of spite, started wearing it everywhere. If they wanted to call me a bride, fine. I'd dress like one, make them uncomfortable instead of me." "You're not uncomfortable around me. Arthur observed. No, I'm not. That's new. 2 weeks into their cohabitation, Arthur rode into Salvation Creek for supplies. Duchess offered to come, but he'd seen how the townspeople looked at her. He wanted to spare her that, at least for a while longer. The general store was busy with Saturday shoppers. Arthur made his way to the counter with his list, aware of eyes tracking his movement. Constance Pritchard stood near the dry goods, holding court with several other women. "Still keeping that creature out at your place, Mr. Pemberton?" Her voice carried across the store. Arthur set his jaw. "If you mean my fiancée, yes. We're quite happy, thank you." "Fiancée," Constance laughed. "You can't seriously intend to marry that thing? What would the children look like? Assuming you could even—" She trailed off into meaningful silence, and the other women tittered. Something inside Arthur cracked. All his life he'd endured mockery, had absorbed insults with quiet dignity, but hearing Duchess spoken of this way ignited a fury he hadn't known he possessed. "Mrs. Pritchard, you are a small, cruel woman who mistakes meanness for virtue." His voice shook, but not with fear this time, with rage. "Duchess is worth 10 of you. She works harder, treats people with more respect, and has more genuine kindness in one finger than you have in your entire body. If you can't see that, the problem isn't her. It's you." The store fell silent. Constance's face reddened. "How dare you speak to me that way? My husband is the mayor. One word from me, and you'll find life in this town very difficult." "Then it's fortunate I don't need this town's approval. I have everything I need at home." Arthur turned to the shopkeeper. "If you won't sell to me because of my choice in bride, say so now. I'll take my business to Copper Creek." The shopkeeper, a pragmatic man named Jensen, cleared his throat. "Your money's as good as anyone's, Arthur. What do you need?" As Arthur completed his purchase, the women whispered furiously. He didn't care. Something had shifted in him. Defending Duchess had felt right in a way nothing else ever had. He'd spent his life avoiding confrontation, but some things were worth fighting for. He returned home to find Duchess in the barn, feeding the cow. She looked up as he entered, reading his expression immediately. What happened? Arthur related the encounter, watching her face carefully. When he finished, Duchess set down the feed bucket and approached him. She cupped his face with both hands, her touch surprisingly gentle despite her size. "You defended me. Really defended me." "Of course I did. They were insulting you." "Arthur, people have insulted me my whole life. No one's ever stood up for me before." Her eyes glistened. "Do you understand what that means? What you did?" "I just told the truth. You risked social standing for me. Small as your standing is, you risked it. That's more than anyone's ever done." She bent down and kissed his forehead, a gesture both chaste and profoundly intimate. "Thank you." The following Sunday, Arthur insisted they attend church together. Duchess protested, but he remained firm. "You're my intended bride. We're part of this community whether they like it or not. We attend service together." They arrived early, hoping to avoid the stairs. They failed. Every head turned as Duchess ducked through the church doorway. Whispers rippled through the pews. Constance Pritchard's expression could have curdled milk. They sat in the back pew, Duchess looking distinctly uncomfortable. Arthur took her hand, a public declaration that drew gasps. Reverend Walsh, to his credit, began the service without comment. But during the sermon on Christian charity and accepting the stranger, Arthur noticed Walsh's pointed glances toward their pew. The message was clear, though the words remained diplomatic. After the closing hymn, as people filed out, most gave them a wide berth. Then something unexpected happened. A young woman, barely 20, approached them hesitantly. She was small and plain, with a scar running down one side of her face from a childhood burn. Arthur recognized her as Mary Kimball, daughter of a farmer on the outskirts of town. "Miss Duchess," Mary's voice trembled, "I wanted to say welcome to Salvation Creek." Duchess looked surprised. "Thank you, Miss Mary Kimball. I know what it's like being stared at. People treating you like you're defective." She touched her scar self-consciously. "I just wanted you to know that not everyone here is cruel." Before Duchess could respond, an older couple approached. Arthur recognized them as the Tanners, who lived even further out than his homestead. Mr. Tanner was missing an arm, lost in the war. Mrs. Tanner was half Cheyenne, a heritage that earned her scorn from certain quarters. "We wanted to welcome you both," Mr. Tanner said. "It's nice to see others who don't quite fit in. Maybe we could visit sometime." Over the next hour, a surprising number of people approached them. The outcasts of Salvation Creek, those who bore scars, physical or social, came to offer welcome. Not the merchants or the respectable families, but the Chinese laundry owner, the saloon girl trying to reform her reputation, the half-black homesteader, the widow with 6 children who struggled to feed them all. Walking home, Duchess was quiet. Arthur let her process, understanding she needed time. Finally, as their cabin came into view, she spoke. "I've never had that before, a community, even a small one, of fellow misfits." "We find our people where we can," Arthur said. "Turns out ours are the ones everyone else overlooks." That evening, Duchess changed into her wedding dress. It was the first time Arthur had seen her wear it at home. She stood before him, self-conscious despite her size. "I want to ask you something about the dress, about what it represents." Arthur waited. "When I started wearing this, it was armor, a way to control how people saw me, but with you, I don't need armor." She smoothed the worn fabric. "So I'm asking, do you want me to stop wearing it? I will, if it bothers you." Arthur stood and crossed to her. He had to crane his neck back to meet her eyes. "Duchess, that dress is part of who you are. It tells your story. I'd never ask you to change that. Besides," he smiled, "it's rather fitting. You are a bride, or will be, if you'll still have me." "If I'll have you." She laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "Arthur, you're the only person who's ever made me feel like I'm exactly enough. Not too much, not too little. Just right. Of course I'll have you." "Then I think we should make it official, soon. Not because of scandal or pressure, but because I don't want to wait any more to call you my wife." Duchess knelt, bringing herself to his level. "Arthur Pemberton, are you proposing?" "I suppose I am, badly, apparently." "It's perfect." She kissed him properly this time, and Arthur felt the world shift on its axis. When they parted, both were breathless. "Yes, I'll marry you whenever you want." They married the following Saturday in a ceremony that scandalized half the town and delighted the other half. Reverend Walsh performed the service at the homestead, attended by their small community of outcasts. Mary Kimball stood as Duchess's attendant. The Tanners provided music. The widow brought food enough to feed everyone twice over. Duchess wore her wedding dress, properly mended and cleaned. Arthur wore his Sunday best. When Walsh pronounced them husband and wife, Arthur had to stand on a stool to kiss his bride properly, which made everyone laugh. That night, as they prepared for bed in their cabin, now genuinely shared, Duchess turned to Arthur with uncharacteristic nervousness. I don't know how to be a wife in that way." Arthur took her hands. "Neither do I. Know how to be a husband, I mean. So we'll figure it out together. But Duchess, I need you to understand something. I didn't marry you for your strength or your work. I married you because when I'm with you, I feel like I'm finally enough. You make me braver than I am alone. You make me feel beautiful," she whispered. "No one's ever done that before. You are beautiful, not despite your size, but including it, all of you, every inch." That night, they truly became husband and wife. Arthur discovered that gentleness and patience mattered more than size or strength. Duchess discovered that vulnerability didn't mean weakness, and together they learned that love, real love, meant accepting someone exactly as they were while helping them become who they wanted to be. The following months brought challenges. Constance Pritchard's campaign of social pressure continued. The general store occasionally ran out of items Arthur needed. Some families forbade their children from playing near the Pemberton homestead, spreading stories about the giant woman who lived there. But Arthur and Duchess weathered it all. Their small community of outcasts grew. Mary Kimball became a regular visitor, learning household skills from Duchess. The Tanners shared farming advice. The widow's children played in the yard, unfazed by Duchess's size. One afternoon, as Arthur worked in the garden, he heard riders approaching. 5 men, led by Constance Pritchard's husband, Mayor Pritchard himself. "Mr. Pemberton, we need to discuss your situation." Arthur stood, brushing dirt from his hands. "What situation is that?" "Your wife. Her presence is disturbing the community. Several families have expressed concern. We think it would be best if you relocated, perhaps to one of the outer territories where people are more accepting of unusual arrangements." Before Arthur could respond, Duchess emerged from the cabin. She'd been baking, and flour dusted her dress. She positioned herself beside Arthur, her presence solid and reassuring. "Gentlemen," she said calmly, "this is our home. We've broken no laws. We bother no one. If our existence disturbs your community, perhaps your community should examine its own discomfort rather than demanding we leave." Mayor Pritchard's face reddened. "Now see here, you can't—" "She can," Arthur interrupted, "and she's right. We're not leaving. You're welcome to try to force us, but I assure you it won't go well. We have friends, more than you might think, and we have the law on our side. Now, unless you have legitimate business, I'd appreciate you leaving our property." The men exchanged glances. They'd expected the timid Arthur who'd lived here before, not this version who stood his ground. They rode off, leaving Arthur and Duchess standing together. "That was well done," Duchess said. "You didn't even shake." "I was terrified, but being scared doesn't mean backing down. You taught me that." Duchess pulled him close. "We taught each other that. That's what partners do." Winter arrived, bringing isolation, but also intimacy. Snowed in for days at a time, Arthur and Duchess grew even closer. They read together by the fire. Duchess taught Arthur card games she'd learned in her traveling days. Arthur taught Duchess to read music, and her surprisingly gentle singing voice filled the cabin on long evenings. In spring, Mary Kimball arrived with surprising news. She'd accepted a proposal from the half-black homesteader Jacob. Her family had disowned her, and she was wondering if she might stay with the Pembertons until the wedding. "Of course," Duchess said immediately. "Your family." Mary's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. I knew you'd understand. You and Arthur, you showed me it's possible to be happy even when society disapproves. You gave me courage to follow my heart." Over the following months, their homestead became an informal refuge. The outcasts of Salvation Creek knew they'd find acceptance at the Pemberton place. Jacob and Mary married in the Pemberton yard. The widow's eldest daughter, who'd fallen in love with the Chinese laundry owner's son, found comfort there when her mother initially objected. Slowly, quietly, Arthur and Duchess built a community of people who'd been told they didn't fit, but found they fit perfectly together. 2 years after their marriage, Duchess became pregnant. The news terrified Arthur, who worried about complications given her size and the lack of medical understanding. But Duchess remained calm. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. We'll manage." When labor came, it was Mary Kimball and Mrs. Tanner who attended, both having experience with births. Arthur paced outside the cabin, listening to Duchess's groans, feeling helpless. When the baby's cry finally pierced the air, Arthur rushed inside to find Duchess exhausted but beaming, holding a bundle wrapped in blankets. The baby was large, as expected, but perfectly healthy. "A boy," Duchess said. "I was thinking we'd name him Thomas, after your father." Arthur looked at his son, at his wife, at the life they'd built against all odds. "Thomas Pemberton, it's perfect." The boy grew quickly, inheriting his mother's size, but his father's gentle temperament. He was 5 years old when he asked the question that had been inevitable. "Mama, why do some people in town look at us funny?" Duchess and Arthur exchanged glances. They'd prepared for this, but the reality was harder than expected. Duchess knelt beside her son. "Because we're different, sweetheart. Mama's bigger than other women, Papa's smaller than other men, and that makes some people uncomfortable." "Why?" "Because people fear what they don't understand, and rather than try to understand, they judge. That's not fair." "No, it's not. But here's what matters. Your Papa and I love each other. We built a good life together. We have friends who accept us. And we have you. That's more than enough." Thomas considered this with the seriousness of childhood. "I think you're the best mama in the world, and Papa's the smartest man, so the other people are wrong." Duchess hugged her son close, and Arthur saw tears in her eyes. Their child, product of a love everyone said was impossible, understood what so many adults couldn't grasp, that worth wasn't measured by conformity. Years passed. Thomas grew tall like his mother, but kept his father's thoughtful nature. He became a bridge between their small community and the wider world, comfortable in both. More children followed. 2 daughters who inherited Duchess's strength and Arthur's kindness. The homestead prospered. Arthur's careful management combined with Duchess's labor created one of the most productive small farms in the territory. Grudgingly, even their critics had to admit the Pembertons knew their business. On their 10th anniversary, Arthur and Duchess sat on their porch, watching their children play in the yard. The cabin had been expanded. The barn stood solid and true. Fences marked property lines that had grown to include an additional 40 acres. "Do you ever regret it?" Arthur asked. "Answering my advertisement? Coming here?" Duchess took his hand, their fingers intertwining in a gesture that had become as natural as breathing. Not once, not even on the hardest days, you gave me something I'd never had before. What's that? A place where I fit. Not by making myself smaller or quieter or less, just by being exactly who I am. She smiled. And you? Any regrets about the giant bride who showed up in that tattered dress? Arthur looked at his wife, at the life they'd built, at the community they'd created for others like them. Duchess, choosing you was the bravest thing I ever did. And that first night, when I took your hand beneath that blanket and felt you really see me, really accept me, it changed everything. It changed my life. Our lives, Duchess corrected. It changed our lives. Yes, our lives together. As the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple, they sat in comfortable silence. Two people who'd been told their whole lives they were wrong, defective, not enough, had found in each other exactly what they needed. Not someone to complete them, but someone to stand beside them. Not someone to fix their flaws, but someone to accept them wholly. In the distance, the town of Salvation Creek carried on with its judgments and narrow definitions of acceptable love. But on the Pemberton homestead, love flourished in all its imperfect, unconventional glory. And for Arthur and Duchess, that was more than enough. It was everything.